Welcome to episode number 7 of the Wheels and Beyond podcast. I'm your host, Ben Durham, and today we have Councillor Skylar Franke as our guest. She's not only the Ward 11 City Councillor, but also a mom and passionate advocate for the environment and community engagement. She lives in the Coves neighborhood here in London, Canada with her partner, and has previously worked with organizations like Reforest London and the London Environmental Network. In this episode, we sat down in Victoria Park to chat and dive into topics like traffic, commute times, the significance of walkable communities, the realities of housing in London, and the upcoming International Car-Free Day when London buses will be free to ride on for the entirety of the day. So if you're interested in urban planning, active transportation, or simply making London a better place to live in, you're gonna love this conversation. Without further ado, let's jump right in.
I'm Skylar Franke, Ward 11 City Councillor. I'm also a mom. I've got a toddler. I live in the Coves neighborhood. I used to work in the environmental sector. I used to work for Reforest London, London Environmental Network. A London resident, although I was not born here. I grew up in Georgetown, Ontario, moved here for school, and I stuck around.
What made you stick around London?
Love. I met my partner when I was at university, and his family's all from here. And then after I graduated, I was able to end up working at Reforest London, which is a tree planting nonprofit. Loved it. And we just kind of never left. I always found good jobs. I like the people. I like the neighborhoods. So it's a good city.
And what neighborhoods have you been in? Or have you always been around the Wortley area?
I mean, I lived up near the university during university, and then I lived in Soho area with some friends after I graduated. Then River Forks for 6 months. Terrible housing situation.
Shots fired.
Yeah. If you know the strip of the street I'm talking about, River Forks is gorgeous, but there's one section owned by one landlord that's questionable. And that's where I lived. And then over to Old South, Park Towers, which is Carfrey and Carfrey, so the north end of Old South. Okay. And then now we're in the Coves. We've been there for about 8 years. Yeah, so mostly within a 20-minute walk to downtown.
Is that a 20-minute walk-ish?
From where I am now, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. It's surprising.
Yeah,
but it's
is.
You've got to go under the Warncliffe underpass and then down Stanley, which turns into York. And then, it does take about 20 minutes. But
Okay. And how long of a bike ride?
It's about 12 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, depending on traffic. And then bus is also about 15 to 20. So it's all within a reasonable amount of time. Under 30 minutes, any active commute option.
Okay. Ooh, you know what? Okay, this is an actual segue, finally, after all of these episodes. So we are going to get into the car-free day. But Right before that, you're kind of saying like this 20-minute time for your commute, or now your commute.
Yeah.
But a lot of people spend over 30 minutes, sometimes over an hour, sitting in a car for their commute. Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, you're saying, yeah, I can walk to work in like 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's great.
So maybe that's one of the other reasons that you're in London still.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, I love anywhere within 20 minutes to downtown. When we were looking for houses, it was Old North, Old South, Old East Village, Blackfriars. So kind of the 4 prongs. I would have lived downtown too, but it was harder to find anything. But yeah, we just wanted that lifestyle. We literally chose based on that. We didn't want to live in the burbs, although again, like somewhere like Byron is quite lovely and walkable, but I didn't want to be that far away from downtown and from all the action. And I grew up in Georgetown, which is a small suburb near Toronto, and my parents both would commute. Either my mom would commute an hour in on the go, which was somewhat nice, but then once you get to Toronto, you still have to find like all these other methods of transportation. And then my dad would drive in to Toronto, and it'd be minimum an hour, could be an hour and a half, could be 2 if there's an accident on the 401. And I just knew, I was like, I do not want my lifestyle to be sitting in traffic at least an hour every day.
It's a lot. It's
a lot of your life.
Yeah.
A lot of your free time.
Staring at these 2 red lights, which are just brake lights.
Yeah.
Yep.
I know. So I couldn't do it. So anyway, we made that choice conscientiously.
That is fair. That is a lifestyle choice. Yeah. Totally.
I actually probably consciously, not conscientiously. It sounds too preachy. I just realized it's like, no, consciously we made that choice.
So on that, Car-Free Day, it's coming up. This is why I wanted to chat with you, because out of everyone, you seem to be very vocal when it comes to we'll get into the transit stuff in a bit, but first, Car Free Day. Did you want to tell me about it?
I do. So Car Free Day is an international event. London has celebrated in the past, but as with everything, COVID kind of took some wind out of the sails. So we're bringing it back. There's a couple of volunteers in Wortley who really pushed for it, but the whole idea is you spend the day without your car as your main source of commuting at all. Like I'm going the whole day without my car. It's on a Sunday, so Sunday, September 22nd. It might be easier for a lot of people. And what we're trying to encourage is get around the city either by walking, rolling, bike, or bus. The buses are free the entire day. It's sponsored by Dancor, so they came up with the funding. So you can hop on any city bus all day and go anywhere. Multiple rides. And then as well, you can also check out places that weekend is doors open. So there'll be so many different places for people to go to. And Dundas Place and Wortley Village will both be pedestrian only for that day. And they'll have animation. So it'll be extravaganza for active transportation.
Okay, going into this, I did not realize that was all happening. Holy bejeepers. Okay, well, we're going to have to book that off.
It's going to be heaven.
Goodness.
You're going to have to plan your day.
Yeah, that is so cool. Okay.
Yeah.
I mentioned transit because I'm like, about the free transit. I didn't realize that was happening on the 22nd.
Yeah, that day. Yeah. So we originally were going to ask the city for some money, but then graciously Dancor stepped up and said, you know what, it's $17,000 apparently for a Sunday. So Sunday's their lowest ridership day. So it's actually the cheapest day to pay. And yeah, people can hop on, hop off. And we really want, since it is a Sunday on the weekend, some people still work on the weekend, but most people will be using it for recreation and leisure or visiting family. So we're trying to promote people checking out parks, splash pads if they're still open, and then doors open. Like there's so much people can do, but we just want them to take the bus, bike, or walk that day.
I'm still I'm flabbergasted that I didn't realize that all of that information going into this. I have had a very busy few weeks.
Yeah.
So going into
got married. It was summer, and we honestly really haven't started promoting it yet. So it'll be kind of in the next 2 weeks. Hopefully everyone knows.
Got it. Yeah. No, that's cool. And you mentioned animations on Dundas?
Yeah, so Dundas Place will be closed, and I know that they're going to have different activities, live music, and I believe a sustainable fashion show, what I've heard. So check it out. And then Wortley will be closed as well. There's going to be yoga, chalk art. There's going to be stories for kids, lots of different stuff going on. So that'll be 11 to 4, both locations, pedestrian only.
Awesome. So I just want to go back to the $17,000 that you mentioned.
Yeah.
And that's for a Sunday, so that is low, on the lower side of transit use, typically.
Yeah.
Do you happen to know the other days of the week? Because that seems really low for the City of London to, make free transit. I feel like that, from a tax perspective, $17,000 of, let's say, everyone being forced to own, operate, and maintain, and then fuel vehicles, that is laughably low. Mm-hmm. What is the, let's say on the low side of it, which is not anymore, 400,000 people in London, divided by 17,000. That's...
I can't do that math, but
I can't either.
It's low.
It's low. I'm hold up. What?
Pennies.
Yeah.
If that, maybe quarters of pennies. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I think if I remember, I'd have to pull up my emails, but I think during the normal work week, it's 90 to over 100,000 a day in revenue.
Okay.
So Sunday's significantly cheaper.
Okay.
FYI. But then at the same time, in regards to transit funding, for sure. So in London, the LTC is our transit provider, and
London Transit Commission.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. London Transit Commission.
Yeah.
And we do not give them a sufficient subsidy from the municipal tax base, in my opinion. So when you compare them to other similar sized transit commissions across Ontario, London is in the bottom and has historically been the bottom of how much we provide to them. So in their operating budget, we give, I believe, again, I'd have to go look it up, but I think it's something like 30 to 40% of and then the rest is made up by contracts with Fanshawe and Western, and then your typical fees. Whereas in other cities, over 50%, up to, I think KW maybe 70% is municipally based. So they're able to keep the costs low for riders and have a much better service, because they're obviously spending more money on their transit. So during budget time, they had asked for, the London Transit Commission had asked for an increase, and we still gave them much less than what they asked for. And what they asked for would just have maybe brought them up to kind of the average of what the other transit providers have. So yeah, I mean, $17,000 is low for the Sunday, but I think that we could be giving a lot more to make it a much better service.
And do you think, I have my own thoughts on this, but do you think that if we were to lower the ridership cost for an individual, would ridership go up?
I think if we were to improve the service, ridership would go up. I think that people who take transit, who absolutely need it, will take it. I do not think cost is a prohibitive barrier for someone who can afford the ticket. So if you buy online, it's like $265 an adult trip. I think if you don't and you have cash, it's $350. I don't think, again, if somebody's making over 70, 80K a year, they probably will just pay that. They don't think about it. But for somebody who's making, 40K or less, that is a barrier. And we do have a fund. We have a subsidized transit fund. So we subsidize youth, seniors, people with disabilities, and people who are blind. And we're maxing it out every year where it's oversubscribed. So there's clearly a demand for subsidized passes. So definitely, I think it does prevent some people from taking the bus. I've heard from seniors it prevents them from taking the bus, but not for the average person. I think when I talk to people, it's, I don't want to take 2 transfers. It's not frequent enough. It's not reliable enough. I think that's the main issue.
Yes, I think that reliability and not being able to get to your job kind of disproportionately affects those of lower income, because then those jobs are more likely to be less stable as well. So if you do end, it's just an endless circle here, but yeah, if you do show up late, then it's like, hey, tut, tut, tut. And then if you do it 3 times, then if you get to that point, then it's like, well, I can't control the bus. And so, yeah, then you have a lower ridership because they opt for getting a car or other means. Yeah, it's
where we spend our money matters. And that's what I found with canvassing. It's one of the great things when you're running for office. You get to talk with a lot of people. And there's a student who's going to Fanshawe my ward, which is still pretty far distance. Like I'm just below downtown, so Old South area. And then Fanshawe obviously is in the East End. And they were taking the bus for the first 2 years of their program. And then eventually they caved and bought a car because they had been late and missed classes due to buses. And so they're like, I'm paying for my tuition. I want to be in class. I have to guarantee that by buying a car. And it's just one of those things where that person's now saddled with a $10,000 a year fee to be able to get to their classes instead of paying, a couple $100 for bus tickets.
And for those of you who do not know about the $10,000 a year, that's like the average that it costs through all of the different things that it costs. And it is it's pretty accurate. You could get it lower, but oftentimes if it's your main mode of transport, you want a reliable vehicle.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of getting that.
Well, when you start adding up, it's like gas, if you're leasing it or if you're buying it, you financed it, new tires, maintenance, all of that stuff adds up quick.
Yeah, we have the 15 that comes and gets us to very close to our home, which is really nice. It comes right down Richmond, Oxford, Cheapside, something like that. Anyways, it's basically our biking route, and the bus also takes that. So
that's nice.
Yeah,
consistent.
It's very consistent, but like when we show up, it's like, okay, show up early. We can see it coming. Yeah, so that's nice. Yeah. We're like, okay, it's either like we run to the bus stop or we wait there for 15 minutes, which is that is less fun. Yeah,
and again, like if you're going for something leisurely with no time pressure, who cares? But it's, again, people working, have doctor's appointments, going to meetings. It's, you want it to be there when it says it's going to be there.
I have a question about the subsidization. For maybe someone listening actually was like, hey, I was unaware of that. Yeah. How do you, you can search it up, obviously, but do you happen to know off the top of your head?
I mean, I tell them to Google it. You know what I mean? I wouldn't even say, don't go to the city website and navigate it. I'd say Google City of London subsidized transit. And then depending on what their demographic or socioeconomic status is, they might qualify.
Got it. Yeah. So at least search that up. So there's that. And then funding has increased for paratransit. Yes. I realized that last year, council stuff, hearing that was disheartening.
Yeah, it was a big one. Yeah. And so there was an increase in funding to London Transit Commission, who is providing that service. They contracted it out through Voyago. So it's subcontracted, and there was an increase for service. There's also other funding provided because paratransit users were asking for universal processes, like in the same way you go on a bus and you tap if you have the card. They wanted that for paratransit buses, which it was a different system. The other thing that they're asking for is not having to sit on the phone for like 2 hours every day to book something, because you can only book 3 days in advance, and then the phone line's open, and then essentially you, like, I've heard of people spending time like 2 hours like just recalling, like, because it's in queue. So they want a system that could both be digital and by phone, because some people can't use computers. But that wouldn't require somebody spending 2 hours every day booking a ride. Yep. And even when they do get a ride, of course, sometimes the bus is late, it doesn't show up, and they miss their appointments, or they have no guarantee of getting home. I've been at events where somebody's waiting outside and they're in a wheelchair. They're waiting for their paratransit ride, and it doesn't come for like hours after what they had asked for.
That is like terrifying to me. Along with often those are medical journeys where they are going for a doctor's appointment that's required.
And hard to get.
Yeah, and hard to get because they scheduled it way in the future, and then the future comes and no bus. And they
can't book it. It's like, I know 6 months from now I'm going to have to go for an allergy test, but I can't book my transit. I have to wait till 3 days before. It's kind of nerve-wracking, you know what I mean? Like, from somebody who likes to plan ahead, that would give me a lot of anxiety.
This is not about paratransit only, but this podcast, I'm just thinking of it like, 3 days before. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't it be more efficient on the paratransit side of things to be able to book, like, hey, we know, like, we'll need this many like drivers and buses to accommodate this one day, etc. Like, let's say there's a peak day where it's like, hey, Voyago is going to, or I guess paratransit, whichever subcontractor does it, let's say car-free day. It's like, hey, we all want to get downtown. So there's going to be an influx of demand, but you don't know that until 3 days before. That's got to be hard logistically to manage.
Well, and I don't know why they do it that way, to be honest. I don't sit on the London Transit Commission. And I probably should know why they picked that time. But I do think at a certain point, like, all of their drivers are full and then they stop taking calls, right? So it's not as if somebody, again, 6 months in advance, like 100 people picked one day, somebody would eventually say no. But yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure why they do it that way.
Looking for answers, but we're not finding them here.
Maybe a future podcast will discover that.
Yep. Later tonight, just like madly searching why.
Like, am I right? Yeah.
Wait, we don't know.
Yeah.
We're just chatting. But okay, next little bit. How do you choose to commute? Do you guys have a car? Do you bike?
I mean, so I choose whatever is most appropriate and efficient for my day, and that looks different every day. My partner and I, we do share a car. We're a one-car household for 2 adults and a toddler, but he actually takes it to work now Monday to Friday, so I don't have access to it unless I want to drop him off, pick him up, which I don't actually really want to do that as much as I love him. So I usually am sans car, which I'm okay with, and then if anything, I like it because it forces me to get off my butt and look ahead and say, okay, am I going to bike today, bus, or walk? Occasionally I'll take an Uber if I've left myself no time and, I've kind of messed up my schedule, but I try to avoid that because I just don't want to pay for one. And I actually enjoy all those options because I don't want to get stuck in traffic going home. Like, it's 4 to 6 p.m. driving out from the downtown. It takes longer in my car than it would to bike or bus or walk. So I don't want to do it. Surprise.
No, that is fair. Like, right now we are, what are we? Like 1 o'clock, and traffic's not horrible. But yes, around that 4 to 6 period, oh my goodness. Like, we've been down here biking, and my, at the time, fiance, now wife, was working downtown as well. And we drove twice over the course of 2 years. And those days are memorable.
Yeah.
Because it took way longer than any other day.
And then you get home and you're irritable and frustrated, and like, you walk in, your kid's there and they're asking you for something. You know what I mean? It doesn't feel good as a human. So I avoid it if I can.
Yeah. And for road expansion, okay, so someone listening is like, okay, well, we have to fix that, right? Questionable, because that's not how that works. And also, a downtown cannot be just, it can be bulldozed. It can. And then you don't have a downtown.
Yeah.
So there's that. But that's just how it's going to be, right? Is there a solution to...
Yes.
buses?
Of course,
peak
it's giving
hours?
people better options. So, I mean, I'm a believer, and I say believer because there's some people that don't believe it, but in induced demand. So, obviously, the more money we spend on road infrastructure for cars, the more people will drive because it becomes a more convenient option. Makes sense. It's logical. Humans follow the path of least resistance, just like water would. But we need to be making people's options easier for bus, bike, and walking. Again, for me, it's very convenient to do those things, and I completely understand when someone tells me it's not for them, and they don't. I get that. Like people who live in the suburbs, that's somewhat not feasible for some of them, or they don't feel safe biking on some of the more congested roads. I get that. So I don't try to preach to people like you should bike, because I don't know what their situation is, but it's incumbent on city council to be able to offer people options. And that's what I try to do, is look at when we're deciding where we spend money. I don't want to spend money widening a road because we know it's just going to create more traffic. I'd rather spend it on investing in the LTC to have more routes and more frequency so people might actually choose it. So I try to do most of my stuff from like a positive psychology lens where, I hope that people will choose it. Occasionally I go in the dark side and try to tell people and compel them, but that doesn't win me any awards. So it's our job as council to make those options easy.
For sure. And for traffic reduction, you mentioned that previously you mentioned that you don't bike in the winter. And so for those who say, for like, what do they say? For 6 months of the year, which is
with climate change in Canada,
there's like maybe February that is cold.
Maybe February has snow on the ground. Like, it's cold in December and January, but there's not a lot of snow on the ground these days. Yeah, so I could bike in the winter. I just have to buy more gear and get comfortable, I think. And I don't think I'd have to do too much, but I just haven't made that leap. I think it's what you're comfortable with. So once I make that leap, I'm sure I could. But since walking and taking the bus is almost as convenient, it doesn't bother me to do that. I just, in the winter, kind of plan further ahead. Whereas in the summer, I'm like, I need to get to work in 10 minutes. Boom, bike, let's go.
And that's why I actually brought this up, is because the transit use. If it's there, then that still reduces traffic by a tremendous amount.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I know. Everyone watching will probably know. It's like, you're not in traffic, you are traffic, like all those things. But people have to have the option to take it and make it work.
Exactly.
So, and then all the people who want to drive or who have to drive, well, there'll be less people on the road.
Exactly. It just helps everyone, period. So there's that.
Easy peasy.
All right. So when it comes to, because you're on council, is that the right way to say it?
Yeah, that's what I say.
Okay. So you're on council, on city council. What are the biggest challenges that you face when it comes to suggesting or voting towards active transportation and micromobility and transit and all of that?
Yeah, there's multiple. I'll first start, it's politics. So everyone has different opinions. They come with different values, perspectives. We can agree to disagree. But at the end of the day, there is a voting base. There's 15 votes, so 14 in the mayor, and you need 8 to win. So if you want to get active transportation through, if you want to get funding for subsidized bus passes, all that stuff, you need 8 people to agree with you. And I find that to be, honestly, sometimes the hardest part is if you look at this council, there's not naturally 8 that always go together. It's kind of a mix. It mixes up a lot, which is kind of nice. There's not a specific voting block, but it is convincing other people who might not have the same opinion of you, as you, on this issue, to vote your way. Another one I find is even just residents. So my ward I consider fairly progressive and very invested in active transportation. At the same time, there's still areas that I get kind of blowback from residents when I talk about things like active transportation, and people will email me and say, why are you wasting our time? Or I agree with you, but the only way to solve it is to add more lanes, so for road or for cars. So even trying to navigate that and explain my positioning. A lot of being a city councilor, I think, is communication and just trying to explain positions coherently and why you're making decisions. Another aspect to mobility, I find, too, is development. So how we develop the city influences how people move around the city. So I'm very pro infill. And I'm very anti-urban sprawl. So I sit on planning and I approve almost every infill application we get, even if it's too big and they have lots of permissions that kind of push out to the side. But I do get pushback from residents who don't, they're used to their neighborhood looking a certain way and they don't necessarily want an apartment building nearby. And I can understand that. At the same time, I have to look at the broader picture and try to have as dense neighborhoods as we can so that they can be more walkable and more services can be there. So I'd say those are the main ones. Is just like working with people and trying to get along and, trying to influence that in the direction I want. And at the same time, other people are influencing it in different directions. So it's a big, messy pot, but what is humanity if not that,
Fair.
Yeah.
In our community over in Huron Heights, we have some infill projects. I think you were there when we were speaking at one point.
Yeah.
So that got approved. Thanks. Yay.
Yeah. Check.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then there's another one. And now people are even more irate. There's this block of land that we didn't know existed for the first few years that we lived there. And then we're on Google Maps looking down at satellite view. What the heck is this? And we go, it's like actually a massive lot. And so there's a development sign up, or what is it? Proposed land use change.
Yep.
And our neighbors are not happy yet again. And we're like, this would be great because it's been a useless patch of grass for the history of London.
Yes, of course. But increased traffic. And what else where will the children play?
Which no one was playing there before. Yeah. So it was just, but no, the increased traffic bit I hear, and people were saying roads are at capacity. And then we were walking last night around the neighborhood. There's a few cars. And it's no, during peak hours, yes, there will always be traffic because that's how car infrastructure works.
Yeah.
But
if I had a quarter for every time someone said, I'm not a NIMBY, but let me list all the reasons why this is a horrible piece of infill and why it should never go in my neighborhood. And can you just make the developer build it somewhere else?
That is what they were saying.
Actually, I can't do that. I don't know if you know, but I can't tell somebody that they have to steal somebody else's piece of property and build it there.
Yep. And they were suggesting sprawl, these other neighbors of ours. And I understand where they're coming from. But my retort to that is, that's just more sprawl. You were just saying this, so I was going to ask about your density or your thoughts on your density. Your thoughts on density. Hey Ben, you can't say that. No, but I was going to ask, and you already I
brought it up.
Yep,
it's part of the whole thing, right? You can't have. Here's the thing: you can't have good transit without density, or you can, but you have to pay a whole heck of a lot of money for it, and we don't want to do that. So you got to have density.
Yep. I have a question about the transit villages, because one of those questionable ones was over near Costco, and then there's some I'm excited for Masonville with the massive parking lot that ends up actually being filled often just because of the nature of it, but that's going to be replaced by apartment buildings, I believe.
Yep, long term, yeah. That's the plan.
Which would be awesome because it's right along a great route.
Yeah.
And so, did you want to comment on either Masonville or the Costco one?
I mean, again, I feel like when we develop those kind of big shopping centers, you build the infrastructure for Boxing Day. So you have huge parking lots that are only really full at major shopping days. The rest of the time, they're half empty or a quarter full, whatever. So there, in my opinion, great opportunities for infill, great opportunity to put a transit village there because it's a destination. People will go shopping. People go out for dinner. That's great. Grocery store right there. So it all makes sense to me that we're readapting. I think shopping centers became this really cool thing in the 80s. I don't know. I was born in the 90s, so I feel like I've always lived with shopping centers. I don't know anything different than that. But that's really what hollowed out all of our downtowns, is having people drive to go shopping. So I'm happy that we are finally recognizing that not a great use of space. And in cities, you have limited space. So let's build some apartment buildings. And then the one at Oxford and Wonderland, what a gong show from a traffic perspective. No one on council disagrees with that. What we disagree on is how do you improve it? Some people think we should widen Wonderland Road. And then a lot of us think, no, we need better transit and cycling infrastructure so people don't drive their cars. I mean, it's just repeating it over and over. But that's kind of TBD. Right now, the widening of Wonderland Road has been paused. And then the master mobility plan will kind of outline what improvements will be needed for that area.
Which council put through the emergency climate action plan?
Last council, 2019.
And I don't know, I think it was a thing to jump on at the time. Like, we agree.
Yeah.
But there's repercussions to that in a good way. But I think maybe not the fact that we are in a climate emergency. However, the repercussions to having that there, that's how Wonderland was halted, right? The expansion.
Yeah,
Actually.
Yeah, they declared a climate emergency, and then they developed a climate emergency screening tool that they then applied to any major transportation decision. So it actually halted both the Wonderland Road widening and then Adelaide Street North widening was both paused. And the rest of their street plans went through.
Got it.
So it did pause two things, that screening tool, and that has been the most prominent I've seen the screening tool since. Since then, it's mentioned in some reports and it's said that it's used, but I have not seen anything get turned down, nor have I actually seen there's a little piece of paper that people fill out and it's not a pass-fail, which I don't love. It's meant to be kind of, here's some more information and background of how it has climate impacts and choose your own adventure. So I kind of want a pass-fail one, but there are some nuances that you can't always have a yes-no. I guess council's yes, no.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm like, well, you have 15 votes.
Yeah, that's a yes, no.
Yeah. Either passes or not. Yeah. So all in all, was that good from your perspective?
It's amazing. So I sat on the Urban League board at the time that the council used it, and then staff recommended, okay, we need to pause both these things. Essentially, I call it canceling, but they did pause it for review in the Master Mobility Plan. It felt like canceling. And at that time, I don't know if people know, but the Urban League gives out something called a Green Brick Award. And I gave the Urban League gave the Green Brick Award to the city's transportation department and literally there's a plaque, if you go look at it, that says for the canceling of Wonderland Road, here's a green brick. So we gave them an award for something they never did because we thought it was so amazing.
That is amazing. Yeah. Not widening that.
Yeah.
Fairly important.
Here's a physical brick. So if you go to transportation floor at City Hall, go look for the green brick. Yeah.
Where is it?
I think it's the 7th floor, but I could be wrong. I don't go up that high usually.
I want to go find that now.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think that was a fantastic use, and it really demonstrated that council was serious about climate change. They're willing to pause something. It also is going to be $262 million, $26 million per kilometer. We could spend that money so much more efficiently in something else.
I was going to ask that, and we are approaching the end of the podcast because you got to get going. But when I joked about expanding downtown's lanes indefinitely, etc., can you tell me a little bit about the cost? You just did for the Wonderland one, but the initial cost and the ongoing costs, along with the costs of induced traffic of lane widening.
Yeah.
Let's say Wonderland or something. Can you tell me a bit about that, or is that?
Yeah, I mean, again, I could probably pull out more specific numbers, but for example, the BRT project at the beginning was supposed to be under 300 million, but in the 270 range, maybe. I think. Anyway, close to that. And then after COVID, and then with inflation and all those things, now it's 460 million, so almost a half billion. Is that how you jump to it? 460 million?
Yes, we'll go with that.
Okay. So
by the end, it would be that.
Yeah. All to say, a lot of that is expropriation to widen certain areas, because with BRT, you do need to have, we're trying to have dedicated lanes. And so that does cause a bit of pushing. We've taken whatever lanes we can from the existing ones and trying to shuffle stuff around. But a lot of that has been expropriating costs. And then a lot of that cost too actually was doing all the sewage work. Pretty much anywhere you see BRT in the city, there's some underground work where we separated sewers or had to improve infrastructure. So if anything, we joke at council sometimes that BRT is really just a massive infrastructure project or a massive sewer project. It's not really transit. When you look at it, at the end of the day, all the transit part is the red paint on the ground and some of the priority lanes. So anywho, that would have been about 270 million, and then it's jumped up to 470-ish. And then when you look at Wonderland Road, that would have been 262 million for just 6 kilometers of road to add lanes for cars.
And that was one lane, 2 extra lanes, one each, or was it one?
I think it was 2. Okay. I think it was going to go from a 4 to a 6 or 6 to 8. I'm not totally positive. It would have been huge. It would have been highway down the middle of which, I mean, some people love that concept when you go to KW, there's some, I don't know what you call them.
Ring roads sometimes, or expressways.
Yeah, but those are built to be express roads. They don't have Costco merging onto the side of it, right? So you can't go express when you have 1,800 different entrances to plazas. there's no express there. So anywho, I get a little ranty about that, but yeah.
You can express your opinion.
All to say, yes. I mean, any city infrastructure is expensive, but I can't remember the exact number. Like there is a certain cost per kilometer of maintaining road after it's done. And that's actually one of our top costs. So like when you look at the city budget, number one cost center is the police services, and then other emergency services like ambulance. And then, but within the top 5 or top 10, roads, I think is 7% of our budget, which doesn't sound like a lot, but like composting is like 1%. So
whoa,
anyway,
really?
Yeah, I'd have to go pull it up, but it's within the top 5 or 10 is just paying for like repaving roads and yeah. Which well, it's not sexy, but it has to get done.
It's a lot of surface area though.
Oh,
like
so
for
much.
Every like kilometer, I don't know, the actual surface area, I don't know. We think of like length of roads, but our roads are really wide, just each lane as well. Like a residential road could be narrowed. And anyways, I can go on a rant there, but
I think, and it depends on the neighborhood, right? Like some of the older neighborhoods have tighter roads because like the houses abutted closer to the road. Some of the newer neighborhoods, you've got like what I call spaghetti development, where it's like you throw a pile of spaghetti and then that's where all the roads go. There's no grid pattern. I love grid patterns. Yes. But yeah, I think a lot of people want corner lots. And when you do cul-de-sacs, everyone's got a huge backyard.
That is this one development that I was talking about in Huron Heights. Those are 2 courts that are now going to become streets. So I can see where the residents are not exactly the most happy. And no, we're not directly on those, so we're not going to be directly impacted. But yeah.
I will say, whenever a development application comes through and somebody emails me saying, I love it, thank you, when it's infill, that's the best feeling in the world. Because like I had a couple in my ward recently, and I had, 1 or 2 people from each of those neighborhoods email me like, I know the whole neighborhood is upset, but I really like this. I think it's a good idea. And I'm like, thank you. So I know that the people who are most upset are the ones you're going to hear from the most. But I would recommend anyone, like even if you see one of those billboards on a street near you and you're like indifferent to it or you're happy about it, tell your councillor, because I think we need to know that there are people who are happy with infill, just like you came to planning, and that was great.
Yeah, for sure. We were talking with our ward councillor. We're going to probably show up on the 9th and be like, hey, please make this go through, because infill, like what we said last time, we're just going to copy paste and then change a few things.
Perfect.
Yep. Which we said everything we needed to last time, but now with a different development in our neighborhood. But as we close, that's a great call to action.
Yeah.
Are there any other things that people can do to get involved, especially just with your perspective being on council?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, again, the number one thing I'd say is either regularly telling your elected officials that you want more funding for transit or cycling, because they need to hear from their residents. We need to have a bit of a culture change where those are the emails I get the most of. And then secondly, if people are considering running for office and they care about transit or the environment, we need more elected officials that make that a priority. So I'm always available to chat with people if they want to pick my brain, because at any level, provincial, federal, or municipal, school board trustees even make a lot of decisions. And I would recommend people either running or finding candidates that they really believe in that care about the environment, because a lot of it is political will. Like we can do a lot of these things if we have the 8 votes, but you need the 8 votes to get it through. So
noted, by the way.
Yes. I'm gonna attack your mic. These are fingers crossing for more people getting engaged in politics.
Yes. No, it was not something I was looking into in the past few years, but recently I'm like, oh, that's how you change a city.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yep.
Okay, I have the funny one here.
Yeah.
Final little bit.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the modal share 32.5%?
It's a compromise to end all compromises. Yeah. I always, if people are following that debate, it was
hilarious to watch.
It was 3 different options. And the first one, essentially, it's funny, when they did the map of like what the roads would look like in 2050, it was red lines everywhere. Because the first one is, if we do absolutely nothing and change nothing but our mode share targets, everyone will be stuck in traffic all the time because they'll just be cars, and like we'll have, everyone will be in their car sitting in lines and queues essentially to go on the road. And so we scrapped that one entirely, and then we're left with 2 is 30% or 35%. Even in my opinion, 35% is too low, because it's still assuming that 65% of people are either taking the car or they're a passenger in a car. But whatever. I mean, what you got, you play with what you got. So a lot of us made a push for 35. There's another big push for 30. 30 is way too low in my opinion. And so we split the difference, and somebody made a motion to 32 and a half. And, you know, if you don't approve the compromise, you get 30%. You get nothing. So
yeah. Like I like what happened, because that 2.5% actually matters a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm glad there was at least that middle one.
Yeah.
And for people who don't know what the heck we are talking about.
Yeah, we should have probably introduced it a
maybe,
bit. Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit about
Sure.
that?
Our transportation department looks at things that they call the modal share split. And that's where it's looking at the trips people take around the city and how they take, what choice of transportation they take them with. And so I think right now it's 23% of people take active transportation routes. So whether that's walking, the bus, biking, rolling, whatever, 23% of trips in London are taken with those options. And then the remaining, 77%? I'm terrible.
That sounds right.
Yeah, 77% are taken either, again, as a primary driver or passenger in a car, like an Uber, or your partner's driving you to work. So we want to change that. And then the idea is by 2050, we want to have the 32.5. So we want to go from 23 to 32.5. So almost 10% increase of people choosing a different option.
And just for context, that's pretty low, because when you are expecting, do you happen to know the population in 2050, which already we were wrong with their predictions for 2030, because we have already hit that and we're in 2024, which is already kind of a whole other topic. But if we keep on growing at this pace, by 2050, let's say we have 1 million people. Does that sound right?
I think that's too much. I want to say like 600,000, but I think that's underestimating it. And I also might be wrong, which is very possible.
Yeah. 700? Can we go with that?
Let's go 700, because that sounds more right.
But so let's say 700. But then you calculate whatever. I was going to try to make it easy on myself with the million.
Divide, carry the 5.
Something like that. Yeah. With the 700 that I cannot do the math on. But you have 32.5% as the goal, which goals are goals, and you probably won't hit. I don't know.
Hey, maybe we'll exceed it. We're exceeding just smidgenly our intensification target. Smidgenly. So
that's
it's possible.
Awesome. Yeah. That is great.
That's
because of all your approvals.
I was trying to use it as a reason to go to 50%. Right now our intensification target is 45% in the primary transit area. I was trying to go 50% because I'm like, we're hitting our target. But didn't happen. So I mean, I think the whole point though of the percentage is it's an average. So the idea, even if you grow in size, you still will shift 10% more of that population over to an active transportation mode share split. But I get your point. It's gonna suck getting around the city if we don't make it easier by taking other options. Yeah,
because, well, Toronto and the GTA are kind of already an example with the horrific traffic there. And like the 70, what is it? Let's say around 70% is the current goal for not the modal share, but the opposite side, which is drivers and the car sharing, etc., or being a passenger. That's a lot of cars on the road. It's like
London right now, it's like, what is it? It's almost like every adult who can drive. So every adult kind of between 18 and 65 has a car, basically. There's 420,000 people in the city-ish. And then I think it's like 268 registered cars. And I have a neighbor who's delightful, but he's got 2 adults in his household and 6 cars.
Yep.
And different cars for different things, like truck, SUV, fancy weekend car, something I'm working on, my beater, a motorcycle he just got. And I'm like, So it's not perfect, but essentially almost every adult who can have a car in London has a car.
Because it is designed that way. So
yeah. But we will change that.
Yes.
Yeah. Hopeful.
That is the objective with this, is just to shed light on other people doing things differently, not only in a vehicle. And actually, there are a few podcasts coming up with car enthusiasts, weirdly enough, on this podcast, because it's kind of like, it's not mutually exclusive. You can be a car nut, but you can still understand urbanism and car-centric infrastructure, because it's not fun. Okay, my final little bit here before we shut this off, because you really need to get going at this point. I'm sorry. You're like, hey, I'm going to get up now and just run away. Yeah. But it's just not enjoyable, even if you are a car enthusiast, to sit in traffic. That's not what you got into cars for. Wow, they're beautiful, this, that. You can think that. But sitting in traffic is not beautiful. No. It's not fun. You cannot floor it like on a racetrack, etc. if you really want to do that.
Yeah.
Traffic is traffic. No one likes it. Done.
Yeah.
So.
Mic drop. You
Yep.
can't drop these, can
Yeah,
you?
we'll just-
yeah.
Yeah.
Boop.
Boop.
Yeah.
Well, that's that. Thank you very much for taking your precious time and
My pleasure.
definitely going overtime. Sorry.
Yeah, happy to. I love talking about anything that's not cars.
Fair. All right. Now for the boop.
Boop.
Awesome. That was like
It is
a
unison.
boop high five.